Hey, Bills Mafia. We know there's only one topic every day. All Bills, all the time. And now Matt Beauvais and Sal Capaccio are going really deep, talking Bills all year long, because it's always game day in Buffalo.
So the last time we were on, it's always game day in Buffalo. Matt told me before we left off, he said, I have to go interview Slick Rick from the Bills mailroom today. I said, that's really cool, man. That's awesome. Little did I or anyone really know, Matt, what was going to become of that interview that you did with Slick Rick. I didn't see your interview until it was reposted by like a couple national outlets.
Yeah.
You know, I hadn't been on social media after you had posted it. And then I saw other people and they were tagging you like from Matt Beauvais, courtesy Matt Beauvais. I'm like, whoa. And that's when I retweeted it and said, absolutely awesome, whatever. But that's how I saw it. It became viral. So welcome to It's Always Game Day in Buffalo.
Yeah.
I wanted to start with this because it was a super cool moment. I'll let you share and talk about it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it was something that I knew I wanted to do right when he was giving the speech. If the Bills were in the Super Bowl, we would have been at the NFL honors, but instead I was watching from the sports office in downtown Buffalo, and I'm listening to Josh make his acceptance speech, and he brings up Slick Rick. And in the moment, I don't think I realized it because I'm trying to do so many things. We're trying to get the article posted. We're trying to get a graphic on Instagram. There's so many things going on. But then once the dust had settled, I went back and listened to the speech again. And I was like, who the heck is Slick Rick? I was like, we're around the team so much. I probably should know who Slick Rick is. So I immediately reached out to the Bills and I was like, can I please interview Slick Rick? And then you search his name on Twitter and all of these people are like posting memes and GIFs and whatever. And they're like, hey, we'll try and set it up sometime soon. I was persistent about it. Luckily, we were able to set it up. And I didn't know what to expect going into it just because when I go, a couple people told me, I reached out beforehand. A couple people told me, they were like, listen, this guy's awesome. He's a character. You're going to get a great interview. Then I went to the facility and I went through security, same security guy who's there for all of the season. He's like, you're interviewing Slick Rick today. I was like, I am. How did you know? He was like, just a heads up. He's very emotional. He might cry. And I was like, really? And they're like, yes, he's a very emotional person. I said, okay, good to know. So I go in, I do the interview, and second or third question, he starts to break down. And I'm trying to hold back the tears. I was like, this guy is unbelievable. What a human. What a person. What a story. So you start to talk to him about what it meant to him, and he's breaking down, talking about Josh individually, shouting him out. And then just journalistically, you're doing the interview. It finishes. You're like, thank you so much for your time. I knew it was going to just immediately pop off. So then I just have to get the post out there, get the clip out there, and kind of see where it goes from there. And then it completely exploded. And all of this is well-deserved. I've only talked to him for 10 minutes of my life. I've seen him a couple times. Now I know who he is. I've seen him around the facility, but I didn't know who exactly he was. I've had so many people in the last 24 hours who work for the team or have even played for the team reach out to me privately and say, I am so glad people are talking about this man because he is unbelievable. So shout out Slick Rick, because the entire country loves you. We're literally talking about millions and millions of people. It was Scott Van Pelt's part of SportsCenter the other night. He's playing that. I'm like, this is crazy, but I'm so happy it's going to somebody who deserves all this recognition. So shout out Slick Rick.
Amazing stuff. I'm an emotional guy. I think you're an emotional guy. We're both Italians. We're emotional. Right? I got emotional watching him. Did you get emotional standing next to him while he was talking to you?
So when he first broke down, I was a bit taken aback. I was just like, wow, this guy, this means so much to him. But I didn't get emotional really in the moment because I'm trying to do the interview and I want to make sure that I'm asking the right questions. But then when I uploaded the interview to my computer and started to find the piece that I knew I wanted to post, I was sitting on the floor in the field house, like literally sitting on the field, on the ground, listening to the interview. I'm like, this man is amazing. This answer is incredible. And the entire interview is like that. So the part that most people have seen is a 58-second clip that has been posted all over the place. The entire 10-minute interview is up on our website, wkbw.com. Every single answer is gold. I mean, he talks about, I thought I was going to have a heart attack. He's like, I'm sitting there, I'm listening, and all of a sudden he says my name. My heart starts to beat fast, and then I just break into tears. He said every single day he goes to work is a dream come true. He looks forward more than anything to punching in, and he never wants to retire. Like all of these things, and I'm just like, wow, we all need to be a little bit more like Slick Rick.
Yeah,
he just
right.
has such an appreciation for every single day, and that's cool.
There's so many things that we could spend an hour on this whole pod. We could just keep talking about this because there's so many layers to this story. Like this personifies Western New York
Yes.
and people in this community, and just the hard work and dedication and the love for being around one another, and especially their connection to this football team. And that's Slick Rick. He said he grew up a Bills fan, like so many of us did here. And now he's working for the organization as a part of this. And it was amazing. He said in your interview, he said he was going to cry if Josh didn't get it. And then he cried because Josh got it, because Josh talked about him, right? He cried either way, because it was instead of tears of being upset, it was tears of, oh my God, I can't believe that. And he's so proud. And I think that what was really cool for me too was that this story showed what this organization is about at its grassroots level to a lot of people who may have heard, or you just kind of, oh, that's the culture and platitudes of all that. This is real stuff that we're talking about now.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I know that Josh wanted to shout out, I'm sure, a lot more people in the speech. But still, I do think that these are the types of people who lead to a strong culture, but also lead to success on the field. Nobody really probably outside of the Bills organization knew who Slick Rick was as far as a Bills employee is concerned before Josh Allen makes that speech. But they love him so much. Everybody in that building is so tight-knit. They all want to win for each other. They don't want to let each other down. And that ultimately can lead to some level of success on the field. And I do think that that was something that they needed to kind of build from the ground up. It's not just Slick Rick. It's the people who work in the cafeteria. It's the security guards that are there every single day. It's the maintenance staff that is there cleaning the facility. It's the PR staff. It's the people who do the community relations. All of these people are kind of trying to accomplish the same thing. It's to win a Super Bowl and to get the players, even though not all of those people are playing, it's to get them right and get them in the right state of minds to go out there and win on Sundays, not just for each other, but for the entire community. I mean, that's what the Buffalo Bills are. They're a way of people in this community coming together and giving everybody hope. And that's why people care so much. And I think that's Slick Rick personified.
No doubt. Really great. Awesome. Once again, check it out. WKBW.com. Great job by you. I know Andy Young, Spectrum, was out there and talking to him as well. So give him credit as well for, reaching out and getting with the Bills and Slick Rick. And I love the fact the Bills made him available to you guys. That they don't have to do that. They don't have to do that. And I think that's great on their part. And they're, of course, proud and celebrating, Slick Rick and what he means to their organization. And for Josh Allen to do that and to bring it to the forefront is really great. Okay. Yeah. So anything else on that? You good?
Shout out Slick Rick. Great
all
man.
Right.
Really happy he's getting all this recognition.
What's his full name again?
Roderick Slick Rick Morrow. And he says he doesn't know why Slick Rick happened. He said people just like to put the word slick in front of the name Rick. He said he remembers Fitz calling it to him a long time ago, and it just stuck ever since.
Love it. All right. Well, the Bills did make some news basically on the field, but on the sidelines over the last couple of days. Now, it's not officially been reported by the team, but it appears it's going to be the case.
It's
true.
Yeah.
Replaced Matthew Smiley, who what we talked last week, how were we surprised that Matthew Smiley was let go? And I said, one thing this tells me is Sean McDermott might have a name in mind. He wants to get that guy. Now,
you called your shot there. You definitely did. You definitely did. I think that's exactly what I thought about your comments. The minute I saw the name, I was like, okay, I think Sal was onto something.
Yeah, I think this read to me like there's somebody he wants and says, all right, I need to go hire this person. And hey, you know what? I don't want to move off from Matthew Smiley, but we're going to do this because it's better for the organization. And that person is Chris Tabor. Now, Chris Tabor, very interesting to me. The different approach the Bills will take now with their special teams, because their last two coordinators, both Matthew Smiley and Heath Farwell, who Matthew Smiley worked under, first-time coordinators. So when Sean takes the job in 2017, he has Danny Crossman. Danny Crossman is let go after a year, maybe 2 years. I can't remember exactly what it was. But Heath Farwell comes in as an assistant special teams coach in Seattle, takes over, first time coordinating Bill's special teams. He's their special teams coordinator for a few years. He is gone. And here comes Matthew Smiley, worked under him, first time coordinator. Now you're going with a guy with 13 years as a coordinator, 3 different organizations, Browns, Bears, Panthers. He did not coach last year, but he's been a coordinator for 13 years. They are going with experience, and I think this is intentional.
Can I share my hypothesis on the
Yeah.
reasoning behind this?
Yes. Go right
It
ahead.
is our podcast. I probably can share my hypothesis without asking.
I would really be disappointed if you didn't.
Yeah. My hypothesis is that Sean McDermott is hiring somebody who is a veteran with a lot of experience because he wants this to be something that he never really has to think about anytime soon. I think Sean McDermott is like, I need to be spending my time. This is not diminishing special teams. I understand it is a big part of the game, but I think Sean McDermott is like, I want to be spending time working with the defense and then occasionally popping in on the offense. And I need somebody who I know is going to have things locked down on special teams. And that's going to be the third of the game that I do not have to worry about. This guy is going to have it figured out. And by all accounts, it feels like this is somebody who is very well respected and has had a lot of success. He's coming into a room with some nice special teams pieces. You like what Brandon Codrington brings in the return game. Tyler Bass had a strong second half of the season. You like what assuming Reed Ferguson is back, you like the consistency of the long snapper position. Maybe they're coaching up a new punter next year. I don't know. But I do think that this is okay, we're going to stabilize this now. We're going to nip this in the bud. And we're not going to be having this conversation like we have for the last 3 or 4 seasons with special teams.
Yeah. So I reached out to Chris Emma from The Score in Chicago, our Odyssey sister station. Chris and I like to kind of bounce things off each other when it comes to Bears or Bills. I asked him about Chris Tabor. Here's what he wrote to me. I'm sure he wouldn't mind me sharing his text back. He said, really good dude, a bit of an old school coach. Players really like and respect him. He has a dry sense of humor that resonates, excuse me. Great with the media as well. One of the best special teams coaches in the game. Since then, also got from Greg Gabriel, who used to work in Buffalo years ago, who's been involved with the Bears, unprompted sent me a message that said, Tabor is excellent. Worked with him a number of years, very detailed, learned from the best in the game, Dave Taub. And after Taub, he may be the next best. So this is high praise coming from people in the media and in the football world for a guy. I don't know how it's going to turn out. I'm not here to tell you and pump it up and say, oh my God, they made a home run hire, but it seems like you made a really good hire for a guy who is out there and not on a team right now that, is coming to your organization.
The key piece you mentioned, very detailed. The Bills have had an issue special teams wise with minor details missing. Why wasn't the right personnel on the field against the Broncos when they ran the fake punt for the first down? Why were they able to give up the big return against the Kansas City Chiefs? Why do these special teams blunders? Well, it's a lack of attention to detail. Very detailed. Once again, goes back to my hypothesis of this does not need to be something that Sean McDermott wants to think about or stress about. You're going to go hire somebody who's got a lot of experience and has a lot of respect and success in this league. And then I'm not going to even have to pay attention to that unless something really goes wrong. And let's hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah. The other thing I really like about Chris Tabor is anytime, I've said this for many years, just being around football and knowing how these coaching staffs work. Anytime you can get somebody who was a former coordinator or head coach to be a position coach, or a former head coach to be a coordinator, it really helps your staff because those people understand so well how the entire operation has to work amongst each other. They're not just going in with goggles on, basically looking at their position group, right? Or their unit, especially a special teams coach, Matt, who has to touch every part of the roster, offense, defense, but he works with everybody. He works with running backs. He works with DBs. He works with linebackers. He works with the kickers and punters, obviously. So I think it really matters here. And here's a guy who twice was an interim head coach in his career.
Yeah, so clearly there's a lot of respect from his peers. There's a lot of trust from his team and from the people both in front, above him in the organization, and then all of the people that he has been coaching. So it feels like it checks a lot of boxes. I think back to what you talked about experience with the coordinators, and I think back to what Sean did when he started here. He hired very experienced coordinators. Then he got to the point where he was the experienced head coach, and he could take a chance on younger guys who had more upside, and those guys have turned out to be pretty good with Joe Brady and with Bobby Babich. Special teams, though, I feel like can be the outlier here. If you want to have one coordinator where you don't need to be experimenting things, special teams is probably, let's say, maybe the lowest reward but excuse me, what's the right way I'm trying to say this? You don't want that to be a position that could turn into an issue, right? So I think you're okay without the upside of a young up-and-coming special teams coordinator. You just want consistency, and it feels like that's what the Bills are going for.
So it's the least high risk, high reward.
Yeah, exactly. It's this. I think it's special teams. You want the safest person.
Yeah.
This would be the
highest floor.
You want the highest floor, exactly.
Right. I get what you're saying, because you can make a great special teams play. That's great, but as I think you said in the last program, you don't notice a special teams coach sometimes until something goes wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And you don't want that to happen. And that's what happened too many times this year with Matthew Smiley. And I do believe that Sean really believed, in all the things he said to us about Matthew Smiley is true. Like he really believed he works very hard at his job. And I think it probably really hurt him and pained him to have to go this direction, but he's also has to do what's best for the organization. And the Bills apparently are going to hire Chris Tabor as their new special teams coordinator. I did, by the way, if anybody cares, I know that special teams rankings can be very impacted by random things. I totally get that. I did put up some rankings of his and color coded them, top half and bottom half of the league over his 13 years in the league. It's much more top half than bottom half. There are some that didn't go as well. I would also tell you it helped for him to have 2 years of Josh Cribbs returning the ball in Cleveland. Remember that guy, how great he was?
Yeah,
and he was the special teams coordinator in Cleveland. All right. Also, in a small piece of news before we get to maybe the biggest debate we could have here about what the Bills should do, and that is the Bills have re-signed Alec Anderson to a 1-year deal. This was pretty much just a formality.
Yeah,
he
it
was an exclusive rights free agent.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, all it means, folks, is the Bills re-signed Alec Anderson to a 1-year minimum salary contract for a third-year player, which he is. And then after this year, he'll be a restricted free agent. So they still have cost control this year at the minimum salary. They have cost control next year as a restricted free agent. And he's obviously a guy they really like as that sixth offensive lineman. More importantly for me, even than Alec Anderson specifically, is, holy cow, Matt. I mean, every single person on the line is back, except Will Clapp, who, a veteran you could probably get back, and Tommy Doyle, whose career is up in the air.
Yeah, exactly. So made no sense to screw around with this, make the formality a reality, and that's what they did. Alec Anderson is a good player. Alec Anderson is versatile. They use him a ton. They love the position versatility. It's just kind of a no-brainer. I was talking to Spencer Brown earlier today. We're recording this on Wednesday night, and I asked him a couple questions about Alec Anderson. He was just like, he's a dude. He's a football player. Those are the type of guys you want on the offensive line. He's a dog, and he just does everything that he's supposed to do, and he's really effective when he's on the field. And I feel like we can all see that. The Bills are a meaner team when Alec Anderson is on the field. And I say that in a good way. Like, that's what you want from your offensive line. You want guys who are mean and can bully people. And he absolutely is capable of that.
As Chris Brown says on the radio broadcast, sometimes when there's a fight, either Alec Anderson's involved or he's running to it. And he's the kind of guy, he's always seems to be involved. Okay. So on Wednesday, we're recording on Wednesday, and on Wednesday during the day, maybe it happened on Tuesday night, but I know that
I think it was Tuesday night.
Yeah. Wednesday morning, I woke up and I was listening to Jeremy and Joe on WGR talk about it. James Cook was on an Instagram live story. Now, I would tell you, first of all, if you would have told me that James Cook was Instagram living, I would have said, oh, no, that's got to be someone else.
That means he had to talk.
He's so quiet. He'd be like one of the last guys I would think, but who knows with these guys, their social media. That's great for him if that's how he wants to communicate. But apparently what he did was he had put his own comment where he wrote 15 mil and he pinned it.
Yeah.
So we only assume he's sending a message that he would like $15 million a year as a contract. Now, James Cook is going into the final year of his rookie deal. He is eligible to sign a contract extension for the first time. How does it hit you, the number 15 mil in that particular message?
Well, let's put this into perspective. A couple weeks ago, his brother Dalvin said that he was going to get $20 million a year. Now James is saying 15. So before we know it, in 2 weeks, it'll be down to 10. And I feel like that'll be a much more palatable number for Bills fans than 15 would be. I listened to GR today. I was listening to the conversation about it. I do not think that they should be paying a running back, top 5 running back money, even if James Cook is really good, which I think James Cook is. I think he's a really good, effective player. But I don't think when you have an elite quarterback like the Bills do, it is wise to pay somebody that much money. we would be talking about somebody who would make more than Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry. Now, I know they're further along in their careers, but I don't think either of us would make the case that James Cook is a more impactful player than either of those guys. And then there's other players who would be more, probably higher on the rankings than he would be. I'm thinking about Jahmyr Gibbs. I'm thinking about Christian McCaffrey. I'm thinking about players like that. So, James Cook, does he deserve to be paid? Yes. Does he deserve to get $15 million? Maybe. Should the Bills do it? I don't think so. Not at that cost.
Yeah, I'm with you on all of that. One of the things that's really fascinating to me about all of this will really be a test for the Bills' philosophy at running back, because they have operated by exactly what you just said. Hey, we have Josh Allen. We're not spending our assets on somebody to turn on and hand it off to. We're spending our assets on
protecting Josh
line,
Allen, yeah.
And then on the other side of the ball, whatever. But it's not running back, right? And we could debate, well, they didn't pour wide receiver money into that, whatever. The point is they have not paid running backs, and they use those running backs, and then they let those running backs go. That's what they did with Devin Singletary. That's what they did with Zach Moss, essentially, and then traded him. They do have Ray Davis. They do have Ty Johnson, who's a free agent right now, but they'll have guys like that on the roster. And as you say, the machine just keeps going because you have Josh Allen. Mm-hmm. This will be an interesting case test for them, because even from their own words, look at the way and think of the way Sean McDermott talked about James Cook and what he meant to this team this year at the end of the season. And I think they just really, really like him and view him as, I believe, Chauvin the Bulldog said today on WGR, I'll use their term, as a core piece. That's going to be a big test for them, because even though he's a core piece, he's also at a position where they basically have treated as not much of a core piece.
Yeah, the thing that you run into, though, and I very much agree, is that some of these guys, when they get to a certain age, and James Cook is still far away from that, hit a cliff. Now, I'm not going to say that these guys have hit a cliff, but here's some running backs around the $15 million a year mark. Ramondre Stevenson, $17 million. Chuba Hubbard, 16.5. Joe Mixon, 16. DeAndre Swift, 15. Najee Harris, 13. Miles Sanders, 13. He's better than pretty much all those guys and deserves to be paid higher than them. He's also younger, but does he deserve to get more than Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor? Those are the guys that are in the top 5. So the other thing that I was thinking about too is $15 million. If $15 million is the number that he wants, it's not crazy, and I think the Bills would do it. And then I think too, what is more valuable to the Bills? James Cook getting $15 million-ish a year, or the Bills having a $10 million player and a guy like Dwayne Smoot back? Because let's combine their salaries. What is more valuable to them? And then that's when I get to, oh, well, maybe James Cook is more valuable. Maybe it would be more valuable to have James Cook than it would be to have Tony Pollard and AJ Epinesa, or players that money would equal $15 million. So I think you can make the argument either way. I don't think he should get top 5 money, but I think he should be in that 5 to 10 range. He deserves to be in that range, and I would be very comfortable if the Bills did that.
We'll see if this gets to any sort of situation that we're talking about in OTAs. I wouldn't doubt it, though. I mean, we could go to OTAs and be like, hey, James Cook isn't here. And he has every right not to be there. It's voluntary. Yeah. The only time this has really happened, I think, recently is Jordan Poyer didn't go to OTAs, but otherwise they kind of worked something out.
Completely about that.
Right. I think that's the last time anything like this really was an issue in any regard. That's what's amazing about this Bills run ways, that they have not had this.
Also Stephon Diggs.
But he didn't have, it was no contract issue.
No, it was just, it was just, that was the only other one I could think about.
Right. But I mean, there's been no contract issues.
No.
Right.
No.
I mean, every team seems to have them.
The
Chiefs had it with Chris Jones. Chris Jones missed a game.
Yeah, it's crazy.
2 years ago, right? Like, it's just wild to me, and that's why I'm like wondering, how does Brandon Beane head this off before it gets to that point?
The way they talked about him, it certainly sounds like he's going to be back with a contract extension. I'm expecting it.
Well,
honestly,
I guess it should be said so everybody understands, because I just kind of said it. He is under contract for another year, And if you're thinking of, well, he's not going to show up in August, well, guess what then? Then he's getting fined a ton of money, and that just doesn't normally happen in the NFL. Hassan Reddick did, and it was crazy that he held out the way he did last year with the Jets. But nobody holds out anymore in the NFL, really. It's just way too much money and too cost prohibitive. So I wouldn't even worry about that. That's too far down the road. The Bills can just let him play out his 4th year. And I'll tell you what else, Matt, they can do. How about this?
Give him a franchise tag.
Yeah, because you know what that tag is this year? 13 mil.
There you go. Right?
I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Let him play. It's going to be 15 mil next year. If you let him play out this year, franchise tag for running backs next year is probably going to be $15 million. You could do that. You could have cost control.
That's when we're talking about a holdout, though. The franchise tag with the running back. That's when it becomes the whole issue of you got to get paid before you get another year in your belt, where you get another year closer to that cliff that running backs seem to hit. Although this year, some of the guys completely disproved that theory. Guys who people were worried would take a step back. Derrick Henry certainly didn't. Josh Jacobs certainly didn't. Joe Mixon certainly didn't. So, the theory has changed a little bit, and also the way the game is played has changed a little bit. So that's why I do think there is a much better chance to me that they give him an extension that they don't. That's the way I'm kind of approaching the offseason.
He has scheduled them count a little over $5 million in the cap this year. They could give him an extension and not have to raise that too much this year by how they structure the contract. So we'll see if that happens. The other part of this that we'll talk a lot about going forward, we don't have as much time on this podcast, but we will, is he's just one of 5. You got to make some decisions here. It's James Cook. It's Greg Rousseau going to his 5th-year option. But here are the guys who are going to the last year of their contract. James Cook, Greg Rousseau, Khalil Shakir, Christian Benford, and Terrell Bernard. And those are all guys I think the Bills would love to have back in some capacity, and keep long-term or whatever. We'll talk more about that. All right. Let's get to some questions before we sign off on this episode.
Yeah, for sure. This one's from Mark. He's a frequent listener. Mark David, thanks for the question.
Yeah.
Is Dalton Kincaid a good fit with what Joe Brady wants to do on offense? And then he talks back to more of the 12 personnel that they had with Dorsey. That's when Kincaid was drafted. You think Dalton Kincaid is a good fit?
Yeah, I think Dalton Kincaid's a good fit in any offense. I think he's a good football player. I mean, I had a debate in the media room. I don't know if you were paying attention last week before we had the press conference, and we were talking about Dalton Kincaid and his lack of impact this year, and I agree. But, man, I seem to be the only one in my little area reminding people that he was really good his rookie year because people's pushed back on that. And I said, how could you not call him really good when he was he had the 4th most catches ever for a tight end in his rookie season? I think he's a good football player, but I do agree that he needs to make more of an impact. The question about Joe Brady's offense, I do think Joe Brady needs to maybe highlight him a little bit more. But I think that's easy. He's a good football player. You can do that.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree with you. The pushback I would give you on Dalton Kincaid's first year, it's not really pushback. I would just say the easy arguments people would make would be the touchdown number was low. It was only 2. I'm not saying that's an indicator of look what James Cook just did. He went from 2 touchdowns to 18 touchdowns or whatever it was. And then Sam Laporta. So Sam Laporta swayed the entire conversation because he was so dominant as a rookie that all of a sudden Dalton Kincaid, also having a historical rookie season, somehow kind of was pushed to the back burner. I do think that he's a good football player. I think he's a good fit, but I think they need more consistency out of him. So I think that one, yes, he's a good player and they need to utilize him more, but he also needs to earn the trust of his team to consistently be counted on. And I'm not just talking about the way the season ended. I'm talking about some of the other plays that happened along the way. Also, has to grow as a blocker, right? Like they need you to
that's what they said about his play strength too. I think that sustaining the rigors of a full season and being able to be, maybe a more consistent blocker as well would happen in that regard. All right. So go ahead.
No, there's there's a lot of really good questions that we got today. So there's a lot that we could hit. This is do you know the answer? How many void years can you add to a contract?
I believe only 3, maybe
That's
4, but I'll have to go check that. Let me see if I can find that real quick.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll start talking here. This is a question from John. He goes, if a trade doesn't happen for the defensive line, what is your strategy for the first 3 rounds? John, I love this question because I do think that these are the 2 kind of most likely outcomes, right? So they either trade multiple assets to get the defensive lineman that they want, or they draft a defensive lineman very early in this draft, probably with one of their first 3 picks. If I were guessing, I would say their first pick would be an edge rusher. Their second pick would be a defensive tackle. And their third pick, also in the second round, would either be another defensive lineman or potentially a cornerback. Now, the one position that I'm leaving out here is wide receiver. I think that they could go that route, but it almost feels like they might put a piece of duct tape on the wide receiver position and go do something like a Hollywood Brown or one of those flyers on a guy where maybe you could get them for a $5-6 million a year deal and then just hope that they turn into something with this offense. Because they kind of proved this year that they can be somewhat efficient, even if they don't have the most loaded wide receiver room. And then the other option is Amari Cooper, right? Do you want to have Amari Cooper back? And
I would love it. I just think he's going to have a market that's going to be too rich for the Bills. He's a year removed from back-to-back 1,100-yard seasons. Some team's going to say, I'll pay him for a year. I don't think the Bills are going to play in that. Look, I know there's a cop-out. I think I agree with you. Like, D-line is where I'm going to be focused. I got to see what happens in free agency. I think everything changes. Like, you just all of a sudden, oh, wait, they don't need that anymore because they signed this guy, right? Everything changes in free agency. So I'm going to wait till kind of April to kind of really dig more into what I think they're going to do in the draft. But I think as you sit here right now is the way their resources heading into the offseason, I think are focused exactly where you just said. And D-line is number one. By the way, number of void years. This is why I wanted to look it up, and I'm glad. The maximum number of void years you can add is 5 minus the years remaining on the contract. So if you have 2 years remaining, it's 3. If you have 1 year remaining, it's 4. So it's 5 minus the years remaining.
Did you see that tweet today? Somebody who's got a salary. I actually favorited it. I can find it pretty quick. The most cap dollars currently in void years. This is from Nick Corte, NFL contract analysis. Guess where the Bills rank? Did you see this?
I did not.
Okay. So the number one team with the most cap dollars currently in void years is the Philadelphia Eagles with $390 million. For perspective, they're the number one team. The Buffalo Bills have $33 million in void years. They're the 16th team. They're kind of the right in the smack dab of the middle.
I bet you a couple of years ago, the Bills might have been number 1 or 2.
I bet, right? I bet. I mean, they had a lot of stuff.
Quite a few guys. They had Poyer and Hyde.
They had a lot of stuff they had to clean up with their salary cap.
Yeah.
This is another good question. This is from Ryan. What is the most aggressive trade you would do for Myles Garrett? If you're Brandon Beane and the Browns are like, hey, we're in.
So tough. This is so tough.
Yeah,
because I just there's so much nuance here, and I don't want to put a bar at anything specific, but I would say I actually think I'd give up 2 number 1s.
Oh yeah, I think so too. I think
I don't know if it's going to take that in the end. I mean, that's the starting asking price. You want to say if you're going to throw in a guy like Greg Rousseau, a 1, a 2, Greg Rousseau, something like that. Like I'm probably there. I could probably do it.
So let me ask you this: would you do 2 1s in Greg Rousseau?
Boy, it'd be tough. I think I might have to at the end of the day. But man, what's bothered me a lot about this Myles Garrett conversation is how many people have suddenly Greg Rousseau's become like
untouchable.
No, the other way. Suddenly Greg Rousseau's Aaron Maben to a lot of people. Like, no, he's a really good football player. I've heard way too many like, oh, just trade him Greg Rousseau. Like he doesn't matter. Like Greg Rousseau's a really good football player and he's young. Yeah, he's not Myles Garrett. I'm not telling you I would keep him for Myles Garrett. All I'm saying is if you got to part with him, you do it. But I can't just start throwing him just as a throw-in on a bunch of trades.
Well, then let me ask you this. If you had the choice, what would you do? 2 firsts in Greg Rousseau for Myles Garrett or a 1 and a 2 for Max Crosby?
I think a 1 and a 2 for Max Crosby in that scenario because I keep Greg Rousseau on the other end.
That's what I think too. And I think that you let Greg Rousseau play this year, and then maybe you franchise tag him, and then you give Max Crosby the new contract. The thing about Greg Rousseau, I'm not all the way to the other side like the people you were referencing. Greg Rousseau is going to get paid a ton of money, and I don't think the Bills should give him that. Like, I don't think the Bills should be paying him like a top 10 defensive end. I just don't. I don't think he's there yet. No. I think he's a 10 to 20 guy, really good in the run game, consistent, but doesn't take over as much as you probably would want from a guy like a Max Crosby or like a Myles Garrett, those guys who get the premier money. I would agree with you. The only thing I would say is I know all the analysts out there, there's people who are like, oh, there's no way the Browns are going to get all this for Myles Garrett. We say this every single year. If it's the Bills or the Lions or the Commanders trying to make the trade for him, those are all really late first-round picks. So those don't almost even count as first-round picks. That's why I think the starting point would be 2 1s. And if that's what it takes, I think you make the trade and it's not even a question. If it's more than that, then you really, really have to figure out how you're going to build your team around him, because just adding him isn't enough. I mean, we saw that with the Eagles. You need guys on the interior that can also get after it.
We have I met this is from Ginger's Gridiron and Golf Podcast, but great guys who do a podcast up in Canada, by the way, and they listen to us. So shout out.
Sweet.
Hi,
Sweet.
Canada. How deep do you think the Bills dive into this potential shift in defensive philosophy? More man-to-man defense in the playoffs, acquiring more man-to-man type coaches, as we've talked about. And I do think, man, it's in a storyline for me. I'm going to be very interested to see like where this goes, because I do think there's some sort of movement happening here with the defensive philosophy.
The only question I have is, do you feel like there's any way that this is them trying to salvage Kyrie Elam's kind of potential with the Bills? Or do you think that's too late? You don't
know, because I think that'd be kind of like, why do for one player? Like, you're not.
No, I'm not just saying one player, but I think back to like, hey, he's a first round pick. Right. If you think like, okay, this guy can have success in man-to-man, like we need to find somebody who can kind of coach him up on that. Because we don't even know.
I think they did that last year. That's why they brought Jamel Adai in, by the way.
No, well, the thing is, like, we don't even know what Pellegrino's title, like, we don't even know what he's going to do yet. So
no, but him and Nielsen together have extensive backgrounds in man-to-man defense.
Yeah, so it seems like it's trending that way.
Right. I think they're just building a group to know how to approach a defense that way, not necessarily even go position by position to coach it, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
No, for sure. It's a good question. And I do think that that's kind of the way it's trending. I would imagine the combine is in 2 weeks. We'll probably get a press release the day before the combine of all the Bills coaching changes that have been made. And then I think that'll give us a bit more of a complete picture. I like this question from Rafa. What international game place would you like the Bills to play in? If there's somewhere they could go, where would you want them to go?
Well, I'm going to answer just because of my wife, because she was very disappointed when the Bills were not in Frankfurt, Germany.
Yeah.
Frankfurt specifically, her hometown where she grew up. And that's like great. She wanted that. And like we were looking forward to that. So that'd be cool if the Bills could play in Frankfurt, Germany. But of all the places that, because I don't even know if they're going to Frankfurt next year. I think
it's an incredibly selfish question, because it'll basically just be places we haven't been. Like, you probably wouldn't pick Australia because you've been to Australia.
But I've been to Brisbane, not Melbourne. I didn't go to Melbourne. That'd be really cool, actually.
That's too far for me. Yeah. I mean, I would love to get there at some point. Ireland would be the one for me. I would love if the Bills were in that game against the Steelers, because I've never been to Ireland. It's not insanely far. You're really close to a lot of other major places in Europe, so you could maybe extend it a couple days and go somewhere else too. That to me would be sweet.
I've always is there a place you want to visit in your life that you haven't been, like a bucket list, some place or thing, I should say?
It's a good question. I've done a lot of traveling, so I've been very fortunate, because all of the places I would immediately get to I have been to. I would love to at some point in my life get to Japan.
Oh, okay.
I would love to get to Banff. I really want to see Banff and like just all of the stuff over there.
I think those would be the ones for me. The NFL is going to play in China, and I want to see the Great Wall.
Yeah, that'd be sweet. It'd be incredible. It'd be incredible.
There's mine. So that's the answer to the question. Which international country? When they play in China, I'll go over there, and I want to see that's somewhere I haven't been yet. Of the ones they're playing in coming up this year, I mean, they are going to Madrid. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is definitely cool. All right, last one. Let's answer from Rob. Are sports reporters, beat writers, podcasters as close and friendly in other markets as basically as they are here in Buffalo, or as at least they seem to be? It's an interesting question. There's a lot of layers to it. What do you think?
I've asked this type of question to other people, and the general response is no. It does not mean everybody hates each other in other markets, but I think you don't find as much of the whole en masse, everyone kind of getting along. Now, I'm not telling you there's not people who don't get along in the Buffalo market. Of course there are. But I think you get way more of that in Buffalo, of the everybody kind of gets along. It's a smaller market. It's not this super aggressive, competitive environment. Yes, we're all competitive. Of course, you have other TV stations you compete with. We are the only sports station, but we have podcasts we compete with. No doubt about that.
Mm-hmm.
But we cross over a lot. And I don't think you get as much of that in other places. And I will say specifically, Philly, New York, Chicago, that's where you get a lot of the competitive nature that does not come out.
I think there's a reason for it. I think that I've thought about this actually a lot over the years. I think one of the big reasons Buffalo isn't to the level of competition, and there are a lot of friendships in Buffalo, relatively small market, one of the smallest markets as far as NFL cities are concerned. It is not a market that a lot of people, it's a market that people can start in now. It wasn't that way 20 years ago. You had to go to Elmira, then you had to go to Rochester or Syracuse. Then you had to kind of go up. Now people just start in Buffalo for a lot of these different outlets. So you're coming to Buffalo in a lot of cases from somewhere else. You're moving away from your family and you need to find friends. Well, who are the people you spend the most time with? The people that you're working with, the people that you're sitting in the Bills media room with. As far as the people who cover the Bills on a regular basis, most of them are 35 and under. Most of the people in that room. So it's natural that the people who are not from Buffalo are going to be spending time with each other. They're hanging out with each other, and they're building relationships with each other. I mean, I think back to when I first got into the industry, the people who were close in my age were Jonah Javad, who's now in Dallas, Tom Martin, who's now in New York City, Prescott Rossi, Joe Biscaglia. Like, those are the guys who are a little bit closer in my age. And I was friends with all of them. And it was just like, okay, hey, you can all hang out with each other. There's these people from different parts, and they all come together, and they end up hanging out with each other. So, yeah, I agree with what you said. But I also do think there's a reason, the kind of reason that backs that up, I guess I would say.
I love it. Yeah,
so
I think it's good reasoning. And I definitely think to the answer to the question, which is a good question, I do think we're unique. I do.
It's Buffalo. I think it's just kind of like the way the people who are from here take great pride in being from here, and I think are very welcoming to the other people who are moving here and kind of want to show them.
I'll tell you, I don't want to speak for him, but I think I actually asked this of Marcel, who's in Miami now.
Mm-hmm.
And he basically said, like, oh my God, it's not like Buffalo. No way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you got a couple of people on the beat or people you hang out with, but not like all these different people. We're all hanging out together and, come to my party and come to your meat raffle and all that. Right.
Yeah, exactly. It is cool having like this group. I mean, we legitimately spend more time with each other from July to whenever the season ends than we do with anybody else, even our own colleagues. I see you and everybody else in that room way more than I see the people that I actually work with, besides Dom, obviously.
2 years ago, we had a 50th birthday party for me when I turned 50. My wife put it together.
Yeah.
So we threw it. My wife did. And my vision was, we had just had COVID a couple years before. And I said, look, we don't get it together with people like we used to. Let's have a big party. So she basically said, like, okay. And we had a big party, and it was at Riverworks, which is this really big place downtown, as people don't know. And it's like, invite whoever you want. And I went through in my mind every single spot in the media room, and every single person got an invitation. Every single person.
Oh.
There wasn't a person in that room that wasn't invited to my party. And that, I'm just saying, like, that's how much we all just, hey, it's not like, oh, you're not allowed. We don't want to be with you or around you or anything like that. And I just think it's not me personally. I'm using me as an example here, but I think we're all kind of like that in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Fun fact about the birthday party, the night of your birthday party. What was the thing that happened that night? Do you know?
That's why not everybody could come, because Devin Levi made his debut in a Sabres uniform. It just so happened, which,
I did both.
There were people
I did both.
You did. You came by later, right?
I did both. I went to the game, and then I came and watched, but I didn't have to work. So I went to the game because I wanted to be there for it. And then in the second period, I went over to Riverworks, and then I hung out with you. It was a month after we had our daughter. Couple weeks after we had our daughter. So that was my night to get out of the house, which was then spent coming to your birthday party.
Yeah, I think there were people like, I believe, like Tim Graham, John Morrow, they couldn't make it to the party. They were covering and they were at the Sabres game. You know who else did what you did? I think he might have sang the anthem that night, Christian Kramer, and he actually came to the party afterwards.
You know what else I learned that night? What kind of wine you like.
Yeah.
I'd never even had heard of that wine before.
All right.
Just give me a cab, man. Give me a red cab.
Well, listen.
What red cab? What other kind of
Right,
cab
right.
is there? I
Hey,
just said red
cab is good.
What-
There's nothing
Yeah,
wrong with
no,
a cab.
no, I know, but I'm like, why did I say a red cab? It's the only kind of cab.
Hey, listen, I'm going to be drinking some wine next week on vacation. I am headed out on a cruise out of the country with the fam. You'll be here, and then we'll be at the combine. I know. I don't think you're going to be in Indy, but we'll be talking while I'm at Indy
Yeah.
at the combine. I know you guys will be covering it though at Channel 7 as well, though.
Yeah, it's that's the hope. The hope is that we can get Dom out there. A lot of travel this year, so I'm going to
Yep.
try and dial it back for at least a little while I have the flexibility, and then we'll ramp things up again when we get to September.
All right. Well, I'll talk to you in a couple of weeks then. Next time, and it's always game day.
Yeah, I'll get some guest hosts for you, and they'll keep the fake seat warm for you to come back.
For our producer, Mike Robier, I'm Sal. He's Matt. Make sure you subscribe to us wherever you pod on audio and, of course, at Sal Sports on YouTube.